All right, let's go ahead and call to order this special meeting of Templeton Community Services District. The special meeting is for our budget review workshop. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for coming. And roll call, please.
Directors Ardonish,
Here.
Logan,
Here.
Pearson, here, Peterson.
Yes. And let's all stand for pledge of allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, thanks. All right, public comment. Members of the public may address the board on any items of interest within the subject matter of jurisdiction of the board, but not on the agenda today. I don't think any public comment, so we'll just go ahead. We'll go ahead and start with our business, which is the budget workshop. But I first want to have Lori is here, so if you don't mind, just I guess hopefully everyone's met her. Welcome to our meeting. Our new engineer.
Yeah, I'm the new district engineer. If you didn't know, Lori Azim, and so I've been here since May 13th. So it's officially a new now. Still learning a lot, so thank you for having me.
Well, welcome. We're very excited to have you. So we're looking forward to seeing you grow in this position and all these new projects that are going to come along and address them. So thank you for being here. All right, so business budget workshop. So
Yeah,
this is
thank you. So just before we dive into the budget, I did want to mention that there is food, dinner here. It's a mystery.
Except for the lemon bar.
It's
lemon bars.
picnic, mashed potatoes, green beans.
So some of those items are warm. And if you wait too long, they will not be all that warm. So even if you're not super hungry, maybe just get up and start. This was intended to be kind of a working workshop. Please ask questions or comments or whatever right as we go. Get up if I guess if someone is going to need to leave the room, a board member leaves the room, use the restroom, maybe we'd call a little break. But otherwise, grab food, whatever you need. And I want to start by saying what you got provided for you, or the budget document is pretty complete. It needs the transmittal letter and it needs the department summaries, but all the numbers are in here, including line items for every fund, and the summary of fund balances and all the supporting information that is contained within the document. We have a public hearing that's been noticed for your next board meeting, June 18th, to consider adoption of the budget. If there is consensus to make any updates or changes to the draft today, we will incorporate those into the final budget, or the version that will come before the board on June 18th. So if there are requests or there's consensus to make some changes, we can incorporate those into the next the June 18th version. There will be a public hearing at that meeting. After the public hearing, and any comments that come during the public hearing, you'll be able to consider adopting the budget by resolution. So I'll just kind of dive in. I created this little budget highlights, my little items that I wanted to call to your attention, but feel free if there are other items, other line items, or other items that you notice that you want to discuss or ask questions about, feel free to do so. Otherwise, I'll walk you through the things that I highlighted, and I thought that those were the most significant sort of changes or items that I want to call to your attention. So overall, there is one full-time position, new additional full-time position proposed, which would be a senior maintenance worker. That's a new classification, or would be a new classification for the district. We were actually, this has got a little history to it, or maybe a lot. We've had a difficult time with retaining maintenance workers in parks for like 8 years now. been a lot of turnover that's really led to some challenges with maintenance at the parks. Our initial recommendation was to add a second full-time position. We had we've had money for part-time maintenance, but that also has had turnover and hasn't really helped us create sort of consistency in our staffing. We had proposed to the admin and finance committee a month ago to add a second position. But in the meantime, before that had occurred, or before that committee met, we got a notice that our existing full-time maintenance worker in parks was resigning, take another job. And so with the committee, we had discussed options, and one of those options was could one of those positions be a more senior, more of a advanced level, where it might be a spot where people would stay longer in their career and provide us that stability that we're lacking in parks maintenance. And this has been a challenge now for since we last had a longtime employee in that role. So that recommendation came to make that a senior position, came from the committee. And we have done some external reviews on wage differential between let's say a journey level maintenance worker and a senior maintenance worker. We've also looked at our own structure internally and have recommended wages that are about $5 an hour, a little bit, more than the maintenance worker 3 level, to provide some sort of a pay differential. Our expectation would be if we got somebody in this spot, they might be more seasoned, more capable of leading this effort independently, and also stay longer, which is recruitment and retention have been really challenging in that parks maintenance area.
And so how much is it per hour?
Well, it is, 29.43 to 35.77 using our existing wage schedule. That's what's proposed for this spot.
And then they're gonna be under the supervision of Justin?
Yes, Justin supervises provides direct supervision to the parks maintenance staff. And with Mel and kind of consulting what's needed, what programs are coming up, role and feedback also in terms of parks maintenance challenges that
So I just wanna make sure that there be communication between, I guess, Justin and Mel. And
yes, and that's absolutely our intent.
Okay,
So that's the only new position. Asset replacement and cash reserves are fully incorporated into all these funds. The summary of fund balance, this is items that were not available for the admin and finance committees, weren't prepared yet, are now complete on page 8 and 9. Really, the page 8 is the most information in one sheet of paper about the district's finances. It starts with the projected balance at the beginning of the year, so July 1st. Revenues for all funds, including capital funds. I did want to note, because we won't dive into this later, we've made some assumptions that the remaining water units that were authorized for release earlier this year that haven't yet been accepted would be accepted through the course of the next fiscal year. We just have only gotten through so many folks on the wait list. Cash reserves, which are 25% of the operating funds and 50% of the asset replacement balances are shown. That's based on our strategic financial policies. These expenses, the expenses lines come from each fund's authorization. And so if there are changes to expense lines in the funds, they would be reflected under there. And then transfers in or out, they affect a lot of things. It can get a little messy, but those are funds going from the, in some cases, the operating fund to fund the admin fund. There are also transfers shown in asset replacement coming from the operating fund. The expense side of that, or the outside, is shown as a separate line, the asset replacement contribution for each fund. And then you can have transfers out of capital accounts into operating accounts to cover projects. So if there are one-time purchases or projects that get altered in this process, those changes will be reflected here. Overall, the budget shows about $33.5 million in beginning balance, district-wide, about $13 million in revenue, district-wide. About $9 million in expenses. So that's what we've got. The next page, page 9, is the same information, but for the current fiscal year. Again, stop me if there's any questions. On page, I did want to just note on page 30, that this is an area that there's some, on page 13, that's our property tax forecast. So the distribution of property taxes is consistent with the past many years in terms of the percentage allocation. The property tax estimate is a result of the county's estimate for next year, less our forecast of losses associated with the hospital being purchased by a nonprofit. It's about 50 grand in a reduction of what it would have been otherwise. So that's reflected there.
Has the county's forecast already baked in the Twin Cities or transfer to nonprofit? No, it has not.
They update that a couple of times a year, but we've not seen one in the last couple of months. I expect we would get something like mid-year.
Yeah, a couple months.
Yeah, in a few months, we'll get an update. I don't even know then if it'll be reflected.
Okay. Do we know if they filed for the
I don't know.
nonprofit stuff?
No, I know they intend to. That's
Yeah.
also been meant that we've read that, and it's been mentioned to be in a hospital board meeting. That was their, they were working towards it. Just some bigger picture items. Interest income is, you'll see that that's up over the last year and this year in all the funds. The cities, the district's investment portfolio is just producing better results. That, you know, we're just in a higher investment earnings environment. Our CDs that have, you know, the low earning CDs are maturing. Our newer investments are doing much better, both in class and in CDs, and even in just our bank account or money market account at the bank. Everything's is doing much better than it had been a couple of years ago. And we were at a virtually 0% for a couple of years, and now it's 4, 5, 6%, 4 and 5%. Most investments. Health insurance, we for several years we used a 10% inflation for health insurance. That takes effect each January. We won't get the results. We won't get the new rates until about August from PERS. That was, for many years, that 10% was too aggressive. We were overestimating health insurance. We backed that down to 5%, and then we got burned like 2 years in a row with high increases. So what you see here is a 10% increase because we've had you know, 2 pretty high increases in health insurance premiums each of the last couple of years.
So what has the increase been in the last couple of years? This 10% seems low to me.
I don't remember you know, each plan varies a little bit. The district's contribution, I guess we'd have to go back and kind of look. 10% would have been safe most of the time. But the last couple of years they were high, certainly a lot higher than 5%.
I think one year, maybe year before last was like 18% overall, but it depends on which plan everyone picks.
If I just look at United Healthcare, you know, they had a hack on their system and paid out millions of dollars. Those costs are gonna get passed on. So I'm just concerned about 10% being, you know, it basically, what was our track record to say
Yeah.
10% the right?
Oh,
number?
that 10% is higher. If we would have averaged the last 10 years, 10% would be more than enough, but the last couple of years, perhaps not enough. It's just been high the last couple of years. That's why we increased our forecast to cover at least 10. But I don't know if we're still picking up these sort of COVID costs and whatnot that
The government is no longer
yeah,
picking up.
exactly, a few years back, so. On page 15, we've got just some historical information that we plan on maintaining going forward. It's just statistics, and I think over time this becomes more valuable to you. we don't spend a lot of time talking about the GAN limit, but we're required each year to calculate it, and it's adopted in the resolution that adopts the budget. It's not very applicable to us because of when we were created. We were formed in a period that essentially still requires us to adopt the GAN limit, but the limit itself is not applicable to the district. So we exceed the GAN limit, but because of that timing issue, it's just for reference only. And then as we have for many years, the engineering services, these costs are shown here on pages, you can see on page 15. And the revenue is shown here, but these are the revenue expense figures are kind of really embedded primarily in water and sewer funds, but elsewhere too, you can see the breakdown on that page. 53% for water, 93%, and actually of the expenses, and 93% for the office assistant to water, wastewater 40% for the district engineer, 2% drainage, 5% parks, recreation, and solid waste. And then supplies and non-wage cost, 53% water, 47% wastewater funds. So these are not separately appropriated. These costs, this $193,000, I'm sorry, actually $216,000 in expenses and the $23,000 in revenue show up in the functional funds. So this is just for illustrative purposes. And then when we get into the funds, I'm just gonna keep going unless you have questions or want to talk about something in more detail. The water fund begins on page 19, the numbers, the part that you want to probably look at is page 27. Again, the highlights, the revenue is forecast to be up over the current year projections. Primarily because we've had some subdued water use over the past couple of years have been wet years. Fiscal year 22-23 was very wet, like 45 inches of rain. And then the year we're in now, 23-24, had a much wetter than average year, about 25 inches of rain here in Templeton. And so when that happens, we have lower water use through the rainy period, and then it also sort of extended. Last year was a great example of it. We didn't kind of hit summer irrigation until like July. This year, our irrigation is a little bit more of a typical, we haven't had that really cold, it hasn't been as cold spring, but so we expect water use in revenue to rebound slightly. That's still probably quite conservative. Water and for sewer salary line items. So when I say salaries, that also includes like all the items that are attached to salaries, like FICA, unemployment insurance, workers' comp, retirement, etc. All those line items kind of are attached to the wages. Those are expected to be up in part because if we have a second full-time person devoted to parks maintenance, we expect less utility worker and utility operator time at the parks. Right now, whenever there's a maintenance activity, or for years, whenever there's maintenance activities that need to take place that are beyond the ability of the limited park staff, we have maintenance efforts being done by the utilities crew, utility operators or utility workers. And when that occurs, they code that time, or the time is noted and they're coded to parks. And so with more availability of parks maintenance, it actually creates more time, or less parks work is going to be done by the utility crew. And so those costs are shown here. And that's beneficial because we really are at a kind of a very small, thin kind of crew. And there are times when there aren't enough people to do some of those important utility maintenance tasks. And you need like a full crew to do things like a water main break, repair when it requires traffic controls and things of that nature. Funding for the water portion of what used to be a permit and compliance specialist remains in the water fund. You recall that we used to have a full-time position. when that position went vacant, we farmed out some of the work to a consultant on the source control. We've left the other half, the water half in the water fund, and that position's intermittently filled by an office assistant who's back now after 6 months. Legal services, this is really inflated because of our Steinbeck case. Would not need to be 50, I'm recommending 50,000. It's still it's quite volatile. It kind of depends on how much, if there's a major phase of the case that gets handled over the next year. It's more than likely that it will be, but this has been kind of hard to predict. So that's legal services. Maintenance and repair costs. It might look inflated. It's recommended at 70,000. You'll see in the prior years, it's been like 40, 35, et cetera. This is because we previously had budgeted raising of utilities in county roadways following county road work as one-time expenses, but they keep occurring. I mean, they occur every year. Sometimes we don't even know about it ahead of the budget period. The county will just say, hey, in 4 weeks, we're gonna do an overlay. And it's your responsibility to raise those utilities. So I've rather than setting them in the one-time line item, I've put them in the ongoing expenses because we've had to do them year after year following any sort of road work. Nacimiento operating costs are up quite a bit. This is unlikely to be spent. The reason for the Nacimiento budget, including these costs, is that you'll recall that the Nacimiento pipeline down near Santa Margarita Garden Farms area, about 1,000 feet of that pipeline was washed away last January. And there's a big project, about $8 million to realign that pipeline around that break, around that. So it's gone now. It's not a break, it's missing. And we would be funding a portion of that. Most of the costs will actually be reimbursed by FEMA, but the way that county has put together the Nacimiento operating fund budget is to cash flow the project. So I don't think this will happen this year. It's placed there so we can plan for it. And when the money comes back, our account with the Nacimiento operating fund about 93% of it will come back. But this has about a $75,000 impact this budget year. Electricity costs are up. We did a mid-year budget amendment for electricity in the water and sewer funds. The rates have just been continuing to climb, and they're also up because we expect to do more pumping. We can't count on these rainy years year after year to subdue water demand. So our electricity in the water fund is primarily wells providing water. In the one-time expenses, we have funded the rebate program. This is for landscape retrofits and also water softeners. And if this is approved, we'll plan on kind of doing another little push for marketing that program. We haven't been aggressive recently because we haven't had anyone devoted to running that program for past 7 or 8 months. Although we've had a couple participants over that period of time. We do have funds to replace a number of waterline main valves. These are valves that are either where there's a T in the water system or an inline valve that over time the valve sees, either due to lack of operation. We have a program where we exercise these valves periodically, but some have been seized for some time, which means they either no longer open or close or stuck in the middle. And it's not something that affects us on a day-to-day basis, but if we ever need to do a repair, it can be very challenging if we're unable to isolate a section of the water line. So it's necessary to replace these periodically, and there's a number of them that have been identified to do so. But they're bigger projects. You got to dig up the road and install the valve on the water line. $5,000 is programmed to replace a heavy duty trailer to haul equipment, tractors or aerators or anything that's big and bulky, pumps, etc. We have an existing trailer that's just worn. I don't know how old it was, Justin, 20, 30 years old-ish.
That's right.
Okay. And then we've got 10 grand in water. This is also, you'll see this expense in sewer. To put up an equipment shelter, or might be a couple of shelters. These are like, might describe them as a carport or something. It's just a small pole barn. It's the roof structure so that the equipment we store isn't beat up by the sun all day long. This could, we have one at the wastewater treatment plant where we park some vehicles, but there's a need to cover pipe and other equipment the district owns that would last longer if it's not exposed to the elements. We've got 70 grand program to update the water master plan. This is something that's been in the budget, but we've made some baby steps. We've done the system modeling. We got Dita to do the system modeling, but the master plan itself is really due, and internally we've discussed the likely savings that would be achieved by doing the water and the sewer master plan together. And even though the wastewater master plans may be more urgent, there's some cost savings if we can hire one consultant to help us with both elements of the work. Two service trucks are in here. This is the split cost with two utility. These are, heavy duty 3/4 ton utility bed trucks. One might be a 1-ton truck with a hoist on it. Once a carryover from the existing year, it won't be needed if we're able to get that truck this year. And I think you think it might happen, but there's no certainty.
That's correct. We may receive it this month. And we're constantly checking back in with the dealership. So fingers crossed.
These are items that we've ordered off the state bid list, so they're kind of they're a fleet purchase. And there's only so many vehicles get allocated, and so you gotta kind of wait in line if you want a fleet price. The Nacimiento Recharge Recovery Project, this is essentially the relocating from Selby site to the Creekside site. Project is carried forward. We did end up spending a little money just real recently on some survey work. These are pre-construction activities, so could be easement acquisition, design work, etc. for the project. But nothing is taking place, nothing significant taking place on it until we get some certainty from the county about FEMA. We've really got quite a bit of good news on this project, that the county's design concepts or alternatives analysis of the WSC recommended moving the project to our site. And the county has had preliminary discussions with FEMA about merging that project with the other FEMA funded NACI repair. And if that happens, that should provide quite a bit of certainty that FEMA would end up funding. FEMA and Cal OES combined would fund about 93% of the relocation of the turnout. That's not the entire project, but that's the expensive stuff. That's the pipeline underneath the river, the new turnout, and potentially even the percolation pond on our property. And the county would administer that project because they're managing the other project. So fingers crossed, that sounds hopeful. I'm not banking on it, but this might work out to pretty well and save the district, like I said, maybe nearly $3 million. So
What's the timeline? Are we still within our timeline? Or is that?
yeah, I don't have a. So if the projects, they won't get merged like the same contractor, but from FEMA's point of view, they might be seen as the same project. Everything with FEMA is gonna take a little longer than if you didn't have that federal oversight or, layer. And actually just dealing with the county's bureaucracy is gonna make it slower, but it's a huge help and would save our capital fund again. Probably something like $3 million all in, once you have design and construction management and everything else factored in. It's pretty substantial. If we get certainty about moving forward, we can, on a parallel path, design the remainder of the project. Remember, we're gonna have to put in some wells, some plumbing infrastructure, chlorine contact tanks, some pumps. the project is more involved, but those are actually smaller in terms of dollar size. Smaller components, so filtration, we know we're gonna have, we have some filtration requirements that are that the state's imposing based on the proximity to the surface water. So, so that's in there. The Platts well, we've got a small start on that project in terms of, we now know where it's gonna go, and we've got our hydrogeologists lined up and under agreement, but the physical, nothing, no dirt has been turned, and we don't yet have an easement for that project. One of what we've kind of realized is our placeholder figure isn't big enough. We solicited proposals for engineering services for this project, and the engineering costs were higher than the total cost that we had budgeted. So even though I've increased this to 250 for next year, it may not be sufficient to cover all the costs, and we may have to come back. This is funded out of asset replacement. We had a river well at Platts that has failed. This is, we need to move forward with this well, and it, every time when we hit peak pumping periods, there's gonna be a real advantage. Plus, quite honestly, this increases our supply because there's water that goes by that we don't use from this discharge in Selby, or that's part of our permit that we are unable to pick up during certain times a year at Smith and Creekside, that once the Platts River well is operational, we can pick up. And it also makes our Platts deep well more redundant, because we have, that well is on the border of being out of compliance with arsenic. And so by blending that water with this river water, even if it's just like a 5-to-1 blend or something, we're gonna be able to ensure that we can continue to use that asset. All in all, if you look at the little box at the bottom of all those pages, that's just like a little snapshot that shows ongoing revenue, things that are not related to projects or one-time revenues, and ongoing expenses. And the water fund is to the good by, about $775,000, about $750,000 in the positive. So it'll be healthier financially next year than it is at this time. So any water issues? We can move on to the wastewater. All right. Okay, so wastewater. So the numbers part starts at page 36. User fees are projected to be up just a little bit, but we have a small number of new connections that continue to occur, ADUs and some commercial buildings that have come in, but that's a very modest increase and conservative. I already spoke about the salary issue, this issue with having another devoted parks maintenance worker creates more opportunity, more time that the utilities crew can spend in utilities. So we expect there'd be less of their time coded to parks. So that's that issue. Professional services. This is up. It shows that it's up. That's really, again, we previously for the last several years programmed in the source control work that we outsourced to the Wallace Group as one-time expenses, and I've moved it. I recommend moving it to the ongoing expense category because we have an ongoing need, whether it's dealt with by the Wallace Group or internally. That expense of public education and enforcement is absolutely ongoing, and I'm pretty convinced that if we cease to perform it, it would not take long before we were right back where we were a few years ago with illicit polluters, discharging untreated processed water into our system.
So I mean, it just seems like a lot of money. Is it possible to kind of start maybe having the professional services a little bit less and having our engineer work on that part of it a little bit more? I mean, get a little bit of balance. Because I just did not expect this service to be, when we voted to do this, that would be an ongoing, years down the road, especially at this cost. I thought we could get it to a point where it would be manageable by our own staff.
Yeah, I think that was something that we had envisioned as well, and it may be, that may still be a possibility. It's a little, I hate to put Lori on the spot because she's been here for 2.5 weeks or three weeks or something.
She could be mean when she wants to.
And we've actually started tackling some of these challenges, we're in better shape than we were 4 years ago or so. But it still takes quite a bit of time. The enforcement side is still, I've been dealing with this since Tina's been gone, in terms of writing letters and trying to bill these, the folks that are out of compliance with it. The Wallace Group's able to be in the field and able to have the regular daily communication with them. But there's still enforcement mechanisms that are on district staff that the Wallace Group doesn't carry out. They make recommendations. So it would require more devoted, time. And recall back in the day, before we went with this process, we had a full-time position that was, we had an employee whose responsibility would have been to perform this, and we don't have that any longer. So there would be other costs incurred in order for us to keep up this effort. So, but I think there are options for you to consider. I wouldn't recommend you consider making a radical change today, because we're not in a position to implement those other options, and there will be consequences. I mean, we can see improvements in our incoming wastewater based on the work of this effort.
Jeff, I'll just speak to the fact that a lot of other agencies are doing what we're doing, because it is such a specialized thing, what they're doing, this industrial wastewater, compliance thing, and they kind of have clout, in that industry for being like experts in the field. And so, I could definitely learn those things and go out but they can look at something and know immediately there's something wrong. Whereas there's like a learning curve there, because they go out to these facilities all the time. And I was previously at the city of Tascadero, and they also looked into the same, having the same folks come on to help, and they are helping various other municipalities, because it's just such a specialized thing, especially here, because it's all to do with winery and brewery related stuff, right? So they kind of have that expertise that it's not easily come by. So.
Well, and I think since we started this effort with the consultant, Tent City has expanded
Oh, yeah,
significantly
Yes.
with more wineries over in that area.
that's what's become.
So I can see it's a growing challenge.
Yeah, and we are aware of proposals to add additional facilities that are related. There's projects in that vicinity that are kind of piggybacking on the success of Tin City. They see that the success and propose new additional projects that are coming, that are likely going to have wineries and breweries. And
I mean, at least maybe if there was a way to try to somewhat, not obviously all of it, but just offset some of the cost, it would be nice. But I guess it is,
Well, maybe we need to look at our fines,
yeah.
because certainly if
permit
people are
fees or
just,
whatever it
yeah,
is.
if the fine is not sufficient, then if it's cheaper to just dump it and hope that you don't get caught, that may be what some
Yeah,
are doing.
I mean, it's been several years since we've started this
Yeah.
program, and I don't even know if we've started finding people.
We
yet.
have.
Yeah, okay. So, okay, well, we'll see how it goes.
Are they repeat offenders?
yes.
And, yeah.
So, yeah, and this debt service, you see on the next page 37, you'll see, I just wanted to point this out, this debt service of $684,000 that occurred last year. You might recall when we moved forward with the East Side Force Main project, we had creative financing, and one of the tools that we used was a loan from the water asset replacement fund to the wastewater fund, because the wastewater fund didn't have the cash to do it. We took a loan out internally, and we developed an amortization schedule and started paying it back. Last year, we were able to pay it off. We had enough cash to pay it off. That's now fully repaid. There's nothing else that's owed. So now the wastewater fund will start accruing a better balance, which is going to be needed. We expect changes in the wastewater operations over time. So under the one-time purchases, one of the items I would want to point out is we have $45,000 programmed in for new permit compliance support. You will recall that last year we were asked to make application for the new general permit. I don't know how that really works, asked to make application. No, we were told to make application. We were told to sign up. So we did. And then like a whole year went by where probably nobody at the water board looked at our application. And now they are, and they're asking for lots of clarification and additional exhibits. And so we need resources to continue to support that review, which will go on over the course of the whole next year, maybe longer. And so these are costs to engage experts in those areas as we go through this review process with the water board. And it's really important that we're able to remain highly responsive and get them just what they need, keep them on our side and not coming in to swing a heavy hammer, because they can really make our lives miserable and expensive if we're unable to do so. So we don't want it to, we need the resources we need funds to procure these resources so we can be responsive. This $55,000, it's broken up into two categories, these two service trucks. One of them we might not need because it might be available this year, but that's the same vehicles as in the water fund. These are, 3/4 ton utility body trucks that need to carry a lot of equipment for making repairs, etc. The same trailer, this 10 grand in the sewer fund is for this just one trailer split between water and sewer, not two different trailers. Same issue on this equipment shelter. The equipment shelter will actually be constructed at the wastewater treatment plant, but the costs are split between water and sewer because the water fund will benefit from this equipment shelter based on the equipment we park under it or pipes and other things that are for the water services. There's $70,000 to rebuild the bar screen at the wastewater plant. We actually had funds last year in the budget to do the same effort, but it cost more than we had budgeted and it wasn't a super pressing matter, so it's been carried forward. And we have current quotes now. This is gonna get it done.
Yes.
Okay, just a reminder, this bar screen, when I say the Headworks is a series of technologies that intercept the wastewater before it goes into actual treatment. When we say bar screen, this is a piece of equipment that we got donated from the city of Paso Robles about 10 years ago because we had helped pay for it originally. And so it was used, and at the time, and we dropped it into a trench. We built a new trench and we dropped it in there, and it's a mechanical system that slowly moves and picks up inorganics or items that are flowing through the sewer that we don't want in the wastewater treatment system. All kinds of things you probably don't want to see or touch. And we replaced some moving parts at the time, but it was essentially a used piece of equipment. Since then we've made some repairs, but this rebuild kit would essentially replace that entire screen mechanism. So it's gonna add some significant service life. 50 grants program to purchase another aerator. Again, our goal is to have enough aerators so that when one fails, and this happens, we're able to immediately put another one in the pond at the same day we take it out and then make the repairs to the failing aerator. Sometimes these are rebuildable and repairable, other times they're not. And we bought one to have on hand a year ago or this current fiscal year. And this would be another one of a different type. I have that right?
Yeah, it would be another one. Unfortunately, we were budgeted an aerator, replacement aerator, and we went out and we purchased it when we had one fail. And it's unfortunate that it's unrepairable. So
Okay,
it's
so
just kind of replacing
let's get
what,
back to where we were.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, these things sit in a corrosive environment. They don't last as long as you think. And then this $20,000, and Justin's, I'm glad you're here, that the district owns a little camera system that's, looks like a remote control vehicle that we set inside a sewer line. So this isn't a toy for your kids. We set it inside a sewer pipeline when the sewer pipeline is flowing. And it can it films the condition of the sewer line, so you can identify breaks. And you can also identify locations of like laterals and other things using this camera. And the district's, the software that organizes all the existing videos is no longer supported. And so while we have videos of all historic videos of all these sewer lines, or nearly all the district sewer lines, that have been filmed over time, we don't have access to those right now, or can't view them. And so this is a software platform that will enable us to utilize our existing videos and then continue to create new ones, right? Is that, am I correct?
That's correct.
So. 72 grants programmed in for the wastewater portion of the master plan. Again, we've done some of the building blocks over the last couple of years. And so we're ready to do the main component, the planning component of the master plan to identify future projects. This is a little more urgent because we know we have some new requirements headed our way. We'll probably end up with about 5 or 6 years before we're held to those new standards, and we'll need to plan for the improvements at the wastewater plant to achieve those standards, or at least the ones that we're capable of achieving. And then we also have a number of, issues within the collection system, bottlenecks and whatnot that this can help us prioritize. $85,000 is programmed to initiate the design of the west side force main upgrade. This is the bottleneck that is most pressing. It's not an emergency, but it is the most significant bottleneck that we face. The west side lift, just as a reminder, when we did the east side force main project and brought all the wastewater back, we upgraded the lift station itself, the wet well, we upgraded the pumps. We didn't upgrade the line, the force main line that goes from that lift station up on Bennett near Vineyard Drive. And so that pipeline is a constraint. And we know that we need to either upsize that pipeline or put a second pipeline in that would tie into the lift station and discharge of that area. And it would significantly improve the capacity of that lift station and therefore everything that feeds into it. So this $85,000 placeholder may not even be enough to complete the design, but it'll at least get us started. We do not recommend waiting for the wastewater master plan to initiate this. We know this is the most pressing constraint that the system faces. For a number of reasons, and because this loan is paid off now, we have ongoing revenues exceeding and transfers exceeding expenditures in the wastewater fund of just over $1 million. So we're beginning to build health in the wastewater fund and keep, that's important because we know that in the out years, and 4, 5, 6, 7 years down the road, we're going to have new operations that are going to be more expensive to meet the permit requirements. Any questions on wastewater? All right, drainage, the one you've all been waiting for. Page 41. Okay, so we have this tiny drainage responsibility around Everest Park and German Park, oddly downstream of German Park, where we have facilities that control storm drainage in a couple of neighborhoods in town. And this is a small operation. You can see the expenses in the drainage fund are about $9,300 a year. We have revenues of about $9,800 a year, but the asset replacement contributions kind of take us out of, take us out of balance. The fund has been running at a deficit. It's expected to have about a $4,500 deficit next year. The fund has a fund balance. This isn't an emergency. This isn't a solve me in the next couple of years. But in the long term, it needs to be resolved. I've spoken to the board's been advised that Worst case scenario, you might have to devote some property taxes to this fund. Unless you're able to secure an increase in the assessments of the properties that pay into the drainage fund. And there's, the conservative approach is that in order to comply with Proposition 218, property owners would have to vote on an increase, and that's quite unlikely to be achieved. So we're hopeful that there's some legislation or at least some test cases that make it through the courts that say you can utilize the same Prop 218 compliance mechanism that you do for water and sewer rates, where it's a protest as opposed to a positive vote. That's much more likely to, you're much more likely to have some say or control of those fees. Nonetheless, this is because of its fund, its balance, it doesn't need to be resolved today. You know, I think I've been warning on this my entire duration here. We've got in the drainage fund, you know, we'll end the year with about $23,000. You've got about 5 years-ish to, we've got about 5 years to figure it out. They also pay, the drainage fund pays for 2% of the engineering office. We prepare the annual permit report, and that filing cost is half of it's out of drainage. Questions on drainage?
No.
Nothing new. I'd like to skip admin and save that for the end, just in case for some reason we don't get to it before this meeting's over, so that nobody, you know, so that everybody else will be complete with their attendance here. So let's move on to fire. So the numbers part we're reviewing starts on page 55, all the stuff leading up to 49. And again, just want to highlight a few the items that I've highlighted here. Safer grant, the revenue and expenses are estimated at $243,000. That's a full fiscal year during this fiscal year of the Safer program. So that's essentially 2 full-time engineers with all of their benefits in the current year, or July 1st through June 30th. The out-of-county revenue and expenses is not factored into this draft budget. We've held with that approach each year and then amended the budget if those materialize. And the reason is it's very unpredictable. I mean, we might go on 4 assignments this year, but they might be 4 days, or we might go on 1 assignment, which is 21 days, or we might go on no assignments. So it's really unpredictable. And so our approach has been, we will reflect those revenues and expenses if they occur. We would be able to respond most likely. And when you look at the budgets and the actuals for the prior years, each of the past 2 years, we've participated pretty fully in that program, and those revenues and expenses are there in the prior years. Cell site revenue, the board will surely recall that there was a change made mid-year this past year to move the cell site revenue from the water fund to the fire fund. And that is programmed this next year at about $89,000. We still are working with another cell provider, Dish Network, have been for like 6 years, to locate another cell tower on our property. That would increase this revenue, you know, by 25 grand or so. It's significant, but they're very slow to respond. We've been working on a lease agreement for years. The lease is ready to execute. If they execute it, I'll immediately bring it before the board. It would be a co-located on the Crown Castle tower, so that it would not necessitate a new tower, but new antennas on an existing tower. But the district would have a new ground area lease.
So when was the last time you had contact with
Within the last couple of weeks, I've asked them again, do they have an update for us? And I get asked because they have to enter into a lease agreement with Crown Castle to get on the tower, that point of contact keeps reaching out to them, asking if we've got our lease done, because they're trying to get all this stuff done. To execute an authorization to allow them to sublease that, and I haven't done so because the lease isn't provided here yet. So I don't know, you know, these things can go really slowly, and you don't hear from them for a long time, and then they can go quickly. And I've been I'll continue to stay on my contact with Dish Network because, you know, I know this would be a key revenue source. A new revenue source, listed here that you don't see before is this inspection revenue. You'll recall that we started doing these state mandated inspections for apartments and schools, et cetera. And you then just a few months ago established fees for those inspections. And so this is the estimate in new revenue associated with those inspections that we would perform next fiscal year. I think they were done in the fall, but you know, in a few months and then bill for it. Measure A is in here and it is adjusted. You'll recall Measure A goes, is started at $180 a year per parcel. The total amount of revenue the district collects goes up by up to 2%. If the CPI were lower than 2%, it would be capped at the CPI, but CPI capped at 2%. So for the last several years, 2%. And then it also goes up if there are new parcels created. So if somebody owns a 10-acre parcel, it's assessed one Measure A assessment. But if they divide that into 10 1-acre lots, then we would have 9 additional assessments. So that's the other way Measure A goes up. And so each year we catch up with any parcel subdivisions or lot splits. So that's reflected in there. It's just a, you know, that doesn't grow very quickly. On the expense side, the full year of the SAFER funded engineer positions, that impacts most of the salary and related line items, you know, so all of those benefits costs are for those positions are broken down and included in this budget. They total the same $243,000 in revenue. I do want to continue to point out that the reserve firefighter line item, it's programmed at $165,000. This would likely be something like $205,000 had we not had SAFER. When we implemented the third person overnight shift, there was a small savings in the number of hours that part-time reserve firefighters filled. And so that savings, that, you know, if the SAFER program went away, we reverted to our old program, this line item would increase by 40 grand or maybe a little bit more to cover those costs. So there is a savings to the reserve line item program by having the SAFER funded positions in place. Vehicle O&M, I just want to note, you know, we've got $45,000 programmed in there. That is not going to pay for any major repairs to the old engine. And we've had that over the past several years. Each year we've had some pretty significant mechanical issues or electrical issues with the engine that have necessitated amendments. This $45,000 is going to buy gas and tires and brakes, not transmissions, not big valves, not pumps, okay? Just a warning. And then on the one-time items, the ones that they're not very significant, but I just want to note, there's $4,700 to replace 3 chainsaws that are just, I think, out of date. They're just older.
Yeah, they're just completely starting to break down on us and parts aren't available for them anymore.
Now, these aren't for cutting wood. They're for cutting holes in roofs and fire. I guess you can cut
trees.
Wood, cut trees down and stuff too, but. $1,300 is programmed to purchase a cabinet to store flammable liquids, gasoline, I don't know, lighter fluid, diesel, whatever the stuff used to light backfires.
Torch, thinners that we use, paints, those types of things. We've kind of been out of compliance, not having that flammable liquid storage cabinet out here. It's just sitting on the ground in the apparatus.
So safety issue. Yeah. Wildland hose, $8 grand.
What's that?
So the wildland hose is single jacketed fire hose that it's because it's single jacketed, it doesn't last very long. And the last time we purchased was like 4 years ago. 3 years ago.
And
It's
is
just a
this,
warrant item.
is this mainly used when you go out on, or do we
No,
use
we
it
use it in
necessarily
town, yeah.
in town?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely, yep.
And the $8,000 is programmed for a station alerting system, and Oh, maybe if you could describe what that does.
So the station alerting system, I'm sure you guys have heard the beep, 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 when we get a call that takes place over here. Upstairs, there are pagers that are activated and in the, captain's temporary bedroom here. There's no speaker. We just recently kind of installed a makeshift speaker in there. Cause we had a couple captains that got a knock on their door in the middle of the night by our firefighters and engineers as they were responding to a call and didn't hear them. So they put a pager in their room. Those pagers, with regards to heart health, are not the best because they are extremely, I'll call it, violent when they go off and they jolt you to an alert, or to an awake status. This station alerting system, it's a soft tone that gradually increases, and studies have shown that it wakes up firefighters to a more non-jolting tone. Additionally, we're gonna add some speakers into the bathroom and upstairs. And then what it will actually do is allow us to turn on some lights and then expand into the future when we do our expansion. So that system will be installed and then we can add to it based on future needs.
I can relate to that because when I was in Montreal at 5 o'clock in the morning, the fire alarm went off. And I bolted out of bed and just walked in circles like, what do I do? What do I do? So I can understand that jolt.
Yeah.
So.
It's not good for cardiac health, every couple times a night or something.
We've maintained this $450,000 for this, we're calling chassis deposit, for the new engine. It's possible that whoever we place the order for the new engine for will have a deposit requirement of some sort sometime during the next fiscal year, depending on when the engine's ordered and the timeline of those activities. Just remember, we're gonna have to cash flow the purchase of the engine, you know, the FEMA, I'm sorry, not the FEMA, the USDA money, the federal money, same amount of rules, I guess. Is gonna, will reimburse us, we'll reimburse 75% of the costs, but we'll have to pay the initial costs. You know, we don't yet have that grant agreement in place, but anticipate doing so here shortly. So this is a kind of a placeholder so that we can afford, the budget includes the deposit that might be required. And we'll know this exact amount and the timing of it at the time we select the vendor, or at least a good idea of what the timing would be.
And it was one specific vendor that required that. The other ones don't typically require that. They just require a PO. So
It may not be needed.
it may not be needed.
You might recall, we've got an HVAC system that's given us some trouble with the current the second floor living quarters, and we've limped it along, but if it goes, we'll need to replace it.
So is the HVAC, is that just exclusively for upstairs?
Yeah, so the way the system is set up, this thermostat runs the offices down here also. So we're having to heat this whole room
Okay.
or heat and or cool this whole room to heat and or cool the offices over here. There is a completely separate unit for the upstairs up there.
Okay,
That's the one that's failing.
all right,
And it's failed a couple times on us.
and then it can be repaired.
They
Got it.
said the last time it was like, you can't repair this anymore.
How old is it?
The life of the station,
And then-
25.
Since it's just gonna be upstairs, have we considered just putting in mini splits?
Yeah, that's what I would like to do, and I think we've gotten some quotes, and I
Okay, so
think that, yeah, I actually looking at the mini split, I think, depending upon how many condensers they put in, we might be able to put a couple different segments up
Yeah.
there and even maybe into my office and eliminate that ducting
Okay,
that goes over there, so
Okay.
that's kind of what this amount is,
okay, that's what it is, okay.
is bidding.
I just wanted to note, as you go back to the summary of fund balance page, page 8. Here, and look at the fire fund. Once we factor in the reserve, the reserve calculation is 25% of the expected expenses, the estimated expenses for the fiscal year. And once we so it's just pretty simple math. Once that's added in, it forces the fire fund into a negative balance. That's a little bit misleading because the expenses are inflated with this one-time expense of this engine deposit. You know, we're gonna get most of that cost reimbursed from USDA through Panetta's office funding. And then 2, the cash itself would be coming out of the capital fund.
Yes.
Which has a sufficient balance. But because all of our capital expenses flow through the operating funds, we don't have separate capital budgets. That's what triggers this. So this looks worse than it is, but just keep in mind that, you know, the fire fund is, you know, its fund balance, you know, kind of just barely covers its cash reserve needs.
So yeah, I was just wondering why we're putting the 451,000 in the operating fund. That's just because the way.
It's just a way of flowing
Okay,
money
well,
through.
okay, all right.
It's not it doesn't mean that there's a hardship here. It just, I wanted to explain. So that $450,000 is triggering like $103,000 additional reserve
So
requirement.
do we even have to have it in there? I mean, can we just, when it's time for it, just come at that time and then just
Good.
move the money in at that point? So we.
I mean, you could remove it from the budget, but I mean,
Yeah.
I guess I don't want to give an indication that we're not prepared to proceed with the engine
Oh, no,
replacement. So
Yeah, no.
it just creates this little hiccup. It's our own rules. There's no external. You know, this cash reserve isn't moved into another account or something. It's just illustrated on paper
Yeah.
that we need it or don't or whatever. I just wanted to point out why we didn't.
Yeah.
Additionally, these balances that you see particularly for the fire fund, since it's kind of a modest balance. This is the balance that comes out of the financial statements that it's really last year's financial statements plus this year's forecasted activity create this number. That number is artificially reduced because we would have had investment losses had we liquidated our CDs a year ago because we bought CDs at low interest rates and then the interest rates went up, which devalued the CDs. And so those losses are recorded on our financial statements, but they're not real. We didn't sell any CDs as a loss. This will recover.
Yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why the beginning balance is shown in that regard. So it's just a very conservative way of showing the balance. I just wanted to illustrate that because it's the only fund that's in that position where it
Are
hasn't.
the CFD funds accounted for that too? Cause didn't we create a policy that a certain percentage was gonna go into the?
Yeah, so I have that shown into the next area, but if you're looking at the summary of fund balance, it's really clean to see. Right, the board, we amended the strategic financial policies and said that, you know, for the next 5 years, unless changed, the CFD funds will go into the future fire operations. And then yes, an additional policy that was approved previously that said you're prepared to allocate the first $80,000 every year to the fire fund to cover the new asset replacement obligations of the new engine. Well, that the CFD funds, if you look on page 8 under transfers out, if you see under CFD, it's fund 22. You'll see a number that says 216,684. You see that same number on the transfer in of the fire fund future operations, 216.
Well, it's off 300 because 300 goes to admin.
Oh, so I'm sorry. Yeah, okay. CFD has a small admin contribution too, but so that money that we basically transferred all the money that would have been in the CFD fund into the future fire operating fund as a part of this budget. So that's why you see a 0 at the estimated balance of June 30th, 2025 in the CFD fund. So, and quite importantly, look at, if we're in the fire fund and you look at future operations, you'll recall we set this future operations fund because there was an expectation that, you know, in a few years, we might start running deficits in the fire fund because their costs were gonna go up faster than revenue had. And it was kind of speculative because we didn't know how much CFD funds would come in. But if this is approved as shown, that balance will be $418,000. You'll have a pretty healthy set aside or money that's allocated for those future operations. So any of those deficit years that materialize, you can, you know, dip into this to cover that cost. So that's a pretty healthy amount, and I would expect that will continue to grow over the next couple of years until such time as we actually book the new fire engine and contribute to asset replacement. And these are all, I mean, these are your own policies that do this, so that $400,000 is available to you if you change your mind about how you want to utilize it during the fire. Nonetheless, the fire fund, the sort of bottom line, big picture, going back to page 56, sort of bottom line with the one-time expenses, fire fund brings in about $25,000 more than it is proposed to spend, so it's a small surplus. If you subtract the one-time project expenses, the purchases that affect operating fund, it's got about a $39,000 surplus. That's not a big cushion, particularly given like the vehicle repairs. But it has factored in that loss of property taxes associated with the hospital, which was,
Substantial.
was not immaterial.
So I mean, and needless to say that, if we hadn't done the sell side revenue, we hadn't transferred it over, this would be negative right now.
It would.
So
Mhm.
we are very close. We're very close, so we have to be very careful about how we spend our money. So this.
We've touched on this, just moving on to CFD, that's the, you know, the numbers are on page 60. So, this forecast, we forecast about, what, $84,000 of revenue, $80,300 as far as assessment revenue, and this number will be fine tuned over the next, you know, month or the next several weeks. And about $4,000 worth of interest. We've got some small expenses associated with professional services. And I've got just a little bit of money for legal expenses if there are any in the CFD fund. And then there's that $379 admin allocation expense. So it's net income now to the CFD fund's $80,500, kind of where we thought it would be. So I think you can be confident that that decision to allocate the first $80,000 a year to the fire fund for the engine asset replacement obligation is now here. We're receiving this money, we expect to receive this money, and it should grow going forward. No reason to think that it would shrink. And then this budget would transfer that accumulated balance.
I think we're ready for it.
You wanna? Yeah, maybe.
You guys wanna take a break?
Sure.
Absolutely.
I see you said.
Please. Okay, we'll start with the easy one. We jumped off at streetlights. The numbers are on page 64. This is very sort of standard stuff. We have streetlights that come in sort of two categories. Lights that are tax paid. Those are, for example, the lights on Main Street, and then lights that are in assessment districts. We have 4 assessment districts. And then, so you'll see the revenues associated with property taxes. I did want to note that the property tax figures we use in the budget probably will never match the ones that you'll see in the financial statements, because we're providing you the net figure in the budget. In the financial statements, we record the gross figure and the county expense associated with transmitting us those fees. They charge us to transmit the property taxes to us.
So on the property tax assessment, those are collected through homeowners HOA, is that how that's done?
So the ones that are not property, so the property taxes general those are district property taxes that are paid by everybody.
Mhm.
The property tax assessment districts are property or assessments that you approve each July that are to each specific parcel.
And we're approving just the CPI adjustment,
You're
correct?
approving the assessment amount, but it can't increase, there was a formula that was developed at the time. These were first established that had a fee plus a CPI adjustment. And so we have to each year make sure we don't exceed that cap.
Okay.
So you'll actually, in one assessment district, the fee would be higher than the cap. So we assess only to the cap. So there's a little bit of a loss to the assessment district, but the property taxes have to cut it. So that's the street lighting. Then we go to parks, recreation, and solid waste. The numbers, the interesting part of that, items we're looking at today, start on page 72. You'll recall that about 3 years ago, we merged the solid waste funds with parks and recreation. So you see franchise fees there. That is the franchise fees associated with the solid waste franchise agreement. That's estimated at $244,000 next year. All the programs we've traditionally offered are expected to be provided next fiscal year. So the big programs are youth soccer, youth basketball, softball, t-ball, and flag football. Those are all, each of those have their own program income and expenses that are broken out by each of those sort of more major activities. The program income line item that doesn't have a descriptor, some program income, that is for concerts of the park and then all the smaller programs, skate camp, scooter camp, things of that nature. You will see a new line item that we listed here, fundraising income. So Templeton Recreation Foundation has partnered with the rec department for several years to provide some fundraiser activities, like for example, the beer run is one of those where it's a partnership program. Because we don't take receipts for that program, it'll take the cash directly, they're not our registrants directly, we've broken that out to fundraising income. And this would also cover the Living the Dream, that was historically captured in program income. But again, for Living the Dream 2024, all of those receipts are funneling through Templeton Recreation Foundation, not directly through Templeton Community Services District. So this would just show the net fundraise, whatever revenue we obtain from Living the Dream would be deposited into this fundraising income account.
So that's the $40,000.
Yes.
And then that 40,000, so once that's pretty much guaranteed that it will.
No. That's why I have
I
a
mean-
question as to why this isn't just miscellaneous funding versus a separate line item of fundraising. Similar to kind of fire, we don't know, kind of outgoing services, we kind of hold a spot there, but we don't necessarily put value there, so why is this?
Well, I mean, I don't even know, so that's the thing, I don't even know what the agreement is, so I thought. Wasn't it the agreement that 40,000 will come from the Living
It's
Dream,
not- it's
payment
not-
that much money?
There's no guarantee what that event is gonna make, even when we run it.
Of
right?
course, but
Yeah.
I mean, if it's over 40,000, it could be, that amount would come to the TCSD, right? If they make 50,000, the 40,000 will come to TCSD.
Well, I think the idea is for TRF to make a significant chunk as well and to donate, up to 40,000 from Living the Dream. I think we'll get some from the beer run as well. Typically, that's been a 50-50 split, although we haven't really put it into contract terms or anything like that.
Okay, I guess I'm still confused about
I-
what the agreement is.
I think part of it is miscellaneous income. It would be ideal if it's not like this huge amount, so we have to like search through it to figure out what it's all for. So to just put a bit of a sort of a placeholder, there's fundraising income, it's usually around this amount, so that we can more easily track it. When it goes into miscellaneous, we have to funnel through all kinds of different, I don't know, transactions, right, to see what is in that account, so it's just easier to break it out.
So just the last time, I guess the thing is, the Living the Dream program is changing. It was a district initiated activity. If you look, the last time we held it was in October of 2022. If you look at the actual line item under program income where it shows $125,000, that's where the Living the Dream proceeds were deposited.
So it was lumped in with.
It was lumped in with other, that's also where the proceeds from, say, Concerts of the Park was deposited. And so we didn't, because this isn't gonna be, at this point, a district initiated program, I didn't want it listed as a program because technically it's not a TCSD program. It's in partnerships that are led by Temple and Rec Foundation, which is why we proposed this new line item for fundraising income.
Well, I
But it
mean,
can be, that title, this is, the title could be changed, or it could be,
but I
your
mean, is
budget, you
it
can change it.
close? I mean, is this what we're expecting or are we close? I mean,
We don't know because it's so variable. Every year it's been so different. We've had successful years, we've had not so successful. It's a variable income.
typically it's been at least 35,000 from what I recall.
Yeah, I think
On
the-
average, yeah.
I think the lowest when we were running, it was about 30.
Yeah, the lowest was
And
30.
then
I mean, we've had as high as
There's been banner
75.
years of like 80.
Yeah.
I think the idea with fundraising income being sort of more of an umbrella term also, it's not only TRF expected to necessarily donate to that, right? It's not only Living the Dream or Beer Run, there could be, other donations that come in that can go into fundraising.
Yeah, I think the concern is 40,000 is a big chunk, and I think it's a matter of putting it in the budget because I know it can fluctuate.
Sure.
Because we've seen that over time. But I think what we've got to kind of put in here is what's a number a conservative number that we really think is realistic. And that's what I think we're looking for. I understand that you may get donations, but I think those are certainly not going to be in the size of the 40,000. I think that this, in my mind, is really what are we expecting from TRF, from the Beer Run and from the Living the Dreams? And that's what I think we want to make sure that whatever number we're putting in here, that it's clear to TRF, this is what the district is anticipating. Because if not, it affects your operating budget and what you really can do. So I'm looking to you, Kalud, to also, since you do serve on the TRF board, and I don't know what some of the discussions have been in terms of Living the Dream and what the foundation is looking to do with the proceeds from that. If it's going to be, a split of some sort that the funds come to the district and TRF retains a portion, I can understand that for other projects. But I think we need something here that TRF and the district has a mutual understanding of what the expectation is. So that's what we're looking for. And I think it would help if there was perhaps something in writing, to at least make sure that that's the case.
Well,
Because
it kind of impacts the nonprofit because then there's a legally binding agreement. What if we come short 1 year and we're bound to 40,000? I think that's.
well, I think you can put some conditions in there and some caveats. I think it's just really making sure that, if the TRF board should change, before, there's a settlement of sort, and the proceeds are given to the district. I think at least the incoming board understands what was the agreement. So.
And I think there also needs to be a bigger discussion of it going into an operating expenses, because I think the way it's being advertised, people question the transparency. They don't necessarily want to be funding an operating budget. They want to be funding services, projects and things like that. And so I think that was the biggest focus of why it has been shifted the way it is. is because there was complaints, we are losing funding and things like that because people are getting frustrated that it wasn't being transparent and it's being absorbed into an operating expense instead of the projects and the support that they actually want to give. And by putting it into TRF, we can say, these are sponsorships, these are this, a portion of it gets allocated to the rec department, but a portion gets, put back into recreation services in a different avenue.
Well, I mean, that's kind of, I don't understand that, that's saying that if we put it in our budget, it would not be transparent. All the programs that are running, obviously from,
Because people want to know where their money is going
Well-
to, and we can't say that, we're just saying it's going into an operating budget, it's not like, hey, I gave you $500,000.
Programs, operating budget covers the programs, operating.
I'm just
budget.
relaying what I've been told.
Well,
not going to
well,
argue
you should
about
be,
it.
I mean, you as a board
not-
member, you should be explaining that.
But TRF isn't bound to the district, I mean, this is a working relationship, but we're not here solely just to create funds to offset the district funding issues as well, we're here to support.
And
I know that you're concerned.
Is supporting the programs.
It's also supporting other recreation services. There's parks not run by the district that need support too. There's other like recreation services too. We went nonprofit so that we could take on recreation.
Yeah, but this
But you're
was,
using this as
was
just
a
a fundraising
project, this
arm.
was the program that TCSC
But
started.
also we undertook a lot of expenses to expand it to what it is this year.
Okay, I guess
With
there
budget
should have
that
been
you
an
were
agreement. I guess maybe there should have.
I
been
just
an
don't
agreement.
understand your concern, that you just want district to retain the entire proceeds, like.
Well, that's what we were
But you
expecting,
use
that's
our,
what
you
this
use
whole
our alcohol
program
license,
started.
you use our expenses, like we have access to things that the district can't obtain. And because of that, like, there needs to be an incentive for us also to take it,
Well, I'm not saying we took on all the money, but I thought there was a partnership.
that's
I
what
mean,
it's
isn't that the-
reflected, I
that's
mean.
not-
I think,
Isn't
I
that
think
the
that
case now?
historically, TRF has given the proceeds to the district and it's helped some of the budget shortfalls that we had. And I understand, perhaps there are some folks that, because it's a 501c3, it is a tax deduction that when people make a contribution to TRF. And I think we as a board decided to split it. So I understand that, TRF wants to fund other projects that maybe perhaps are outside of Park and Rec. I think because it is something that it sounds like there is kind of a kind of splintering off from what we've historically have seen. I don't think we can put any money in here. I'm not comfortable with $40,000. That's a big chunk. And what I'm
I
hearing,
would agree with that. I mean, I don't know what your understanding was, but when all of this happened, it was my understanding that they were going separately. They were gonna do the raising, and they could give the money to anybody they want. It's just kind of like the haunted house. They historically gave us X number of dollars, but they also gave it to other people. And I don't remember ever discussing anything here in agreement that said we have to get any money. I mean, they're their own separate entity now, and if they want to give all of their money to somebody else, it has something to do with their bylaws, they can do it. We're not necessarily gonna get anything. I mean, that was a concern, I probably didn't mention that at the time, but I was concerned that I kind of have had. And that's why they split up. I mean, historically, TRF was set up to buy a building or to build a recreation center for Templeton. And when they figured out that couldn't happen, then they started operating just like they have for the last 50 years or whatever. So I would agree. I'm not sure we should put any money into the budget for that until we get some money next year.
The
and we
donation
can
is
add it to
received.
donations, yeah.
because they are an independent.
Yeah, they are independent, so.
Yeah, organization. I think that in the past, though, I think there's been kind of a reliance and just an understanding, oh, well, let's build that. And it could be because we had so many employees, district employees serving on that board. So,
Well,
but I think
just
the
to
reality is-
clarify, the Live the Dream wasn't a TRF program historically. TRF provided support, work, and they solicited donations on our behalf, but all of the accounting for it ran through the district's books. It was, when people bought a ticket, they paid TCSD. Going forward, for 2024 at least, TRF is leading the program. The money will not be coming, ticket purchases won't be coming through TCSD, et cetera. So it's just a pretty significant change. But my understanding is it's not without TCSD's help, and there's a commitment on TCSD staff to be a part of this, it's still gonna have coach recognition and volunteer recognition. So it's not an independently it's being led by TRF, but it's not without TCSD's support or TCSD participation.
But I think that since there's no contractual arrangement here, I mean, we're really dependent upon the efforts of TRF and how much do they actually fundraise? And how that's gonna be allocated to, or donated to the district. So I'm,
Well, also something to keep in mind too, because it was transitioned to TRF, it really kind of expanded what is available for us to do budget wise. With alcohol or other insurance things, being a nonprofit, it was to the advantage of putting it over to maybe increase funds. Now, there's always been kind of a working relationship with the rec department. We've never just kind of taken the money and run type thing, and that's not the intention here either. We have rec department individuals coming, they're on the full committee, they're well aware of what's coming in and what's going out, and so this isn't like a switch to just pocket the money and.
It's not a hostile
think you're
takeover.
Yeah, it's not a hostile
we
takeover,
expect
it was
get a
intended to
good
expand
funds out of
what's
this.
already there, expand it in that we can get a better venue, we can get better, we were able to get on an event planner that maybe the district may not be able to afford or things like that, so it was really intended to expand and benefit both entities here, not we wanted to take it over and, peace out type.
Yeah, no, I understand that, I appreciate that, but at the same time, I think there has to be some sort of understanding, so again, what is the relationship, what's happening, because we are using.
Well, we'll have a better idea this year, remember, this is our
Exactly. I
first
think it's-
year.
Yeah, we have staff
So,
times,
yeah.
that's,
Right.
it's.
I think it's a bit fluid this year because it is their first time doing it and there's been a significant changes to how it's being operated, right? But I can tell you, we'll at least get our money back because I'll present them with a bill. I do, I invoice real well, so, so we'll definitely
That's all
get
I'm asking.
a significant portion
Yeah.
That's what I'm
of the
asking.
proceeds.
And
Yeah.
that's what we should
Yeah.
put in the budget, I
Is
guess
that
that's
something
what
that the
we should
budget
put
could
in the
be
budget.
adjusted
I-
to reflect?
well, but that's a good point, because if we're also TRF is relying upon Park and Rec staff,
Oh, yeah.
that's an
And
expense
it's-
to the district that has to, at a minimum, be reimbursed. So I think at some point, there needs to be some kind of written agreement. To say that at least the district will track its expenses and at a bare minimum, be reimbursed in full.
Sure.
And that's a bare minimum.
But in the meantime,
In the meantime,
we can't do that now. We have a budget that we're talking about.
I understand that.
And
I'm
I think the 40,000 is too
any
much,
funds in.
but I would lower it.
So are you suggesting then we leave the line item, eliminate any expectation and then only reflect it after it exists?
After.
In other words,
it's-
Yeah, I would- yeah.
so this event's in August, so by by the fall, we should have, TRF should have all the expenses figured out and hopefully decide how much is coming back to TCSD, and then we would realize the revenue through the mid-year adjustments.
Or either that, or we reduce it to $10,000.
Well, yeah, because it does include some other fundraising, right? So, yeah, so we could at least reduce it down
Yeah,
to,
you could, either one's on.
I think we reduce it down to 10,000, 15,000.
And we
Rather
hope
than
that there would be more.
Absolutely,
Well, there was-
absolutely.
Yeah, it will-
That is not the intention of
Yeah.
this transition.
And I think the 40,000 is reflective of historically what we've gotten through TRF and the Living the Dreams. and the beer run. So I'm not comfortable with saying, let's put in the budget what historically, because we now have this new path going forward, so $10,000?
I'm okay with that.
Right.
Is there a consensus to adjust that to 10?
Yeah, you just
Okay,
got to
very
read.
good, good, okay.
I'm sure Kahoot will go along with that.
It's all positive thing,
Yeah.
it wasn't intended to be a negative transition. I also keep in mind, we're alleviating resources from the rec department and taking on the planning and for a portion of it as well, so that's the hiring event coordinator.
Okay, on the not, leaving revenue and onto the onto the expense side for Parks and Rec. So the salary line item does include the addition of a senior parks maintenance worker and the removal of our part-time parks maintenance worker position. So this is approved. We would eventually have 2 full-time parks maintenance workers, one being a senior, one being a regular parks maintenance worker.
And that's something, Mel, you're supportive of,
Oh,
right?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to note under professional services, last year when we purchased, or we obtained the field painting robot, turf tank, the robotic line painter. I had it listed under one-time expenses, the first year of a lease agreement. It's a cancelable lease. Because it's not anticipated to be a one-time expense, I've moved those funds to professional services. So it's that those funds include the ongoing annual costs of that piece of equipment. It's a cancelable, we can terminate the lease if there isn't funding to support it, but that's where those funds remain. They're professional services or would be placed. One thing that's important to note under the one-time expenses is the recycling grant program. A recommendation came before the board several months ago from the ad hoc committee that was formed over the holidays to not regularly fund or only fund the recycling grant program if there is proceeds available instead of including it at the beginning of the year. So it's been removed. It could be reconsidered mid-year if by then you'll have a better sense of how much funding is available in the Parks, Recreation and Solid Waste Fund. You know, if there were unforeseen expenses the first half of the year, etc. So if the budget's approved as drafted right now, there would not be funds for these small number of groups that have utilized the recycling grant program. So like Vineyard Dog Park is one of them that has used it religiously. And then there's $2,500 program to purchase a very small utility trailer that could be used to haul the riding lawnmower, the turf tank, which right now is being moved only when we have 2 people available. Because it's too big for one person to lift into a truck. And any other like small debris or things from parks. And the reason this is recommended, Justin, you can kind of dive into this if there's questions, but the current trailer we have is large and it has a gross vehicle weight rating that requires a commercial driver's license if we were to be held to that standard. So if we buy a small trailer, we won't need to have a commercial driver use it. And it'll just be quite honestly, you'll be able to tow any piece of equipment. You won't need a heavy duty truck or anything. It's just gonna be the same type of trailer that you see yard maintenance folks utilize, small, just big enough to load our mower on. So, okay, before we made the change to the fundraising revenue, so let me just subtract that out. This new sort of bottom line fund total figure will go to $113,000. So there's $113,000 surplus bleeding, for Parks and Recreation at the beginning of the budget year. If you reduce the expected revenue by the 30,000.
Just wanna make a quick comment. The reason I'm really for this, having the parks maintenance, senior parks maintenance and another parks worker is that I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I went, I was at Everest Park and the condition of the park is, I mean, it's less than ideal. I could barely walk from one field to another, let alone, if you have to run, it's just, there are bumps and hill, I mean, it's just, it's not
Holes.
flat, holes, I mean. So I'm hoping that obviously what I wanna see that these two people be fully committed to, getting the parks in shape. The grass was dead, patchy, I mean, there were dirts that were filled in, but I guess at that time there was nothing growing in. I mean, if you need aerators, you need this, whatever you need, please let us know. Obviously, there's money in the budget, we gotta get those parks fixed, I mean, it's, we have a lot of people that use those parks, not only for the safety of our kids, but also, a lot of them are families that are just new to Templeton, coming in, visiting other family members, and just to see the parks in that condition, it's been, I mean, I hate to say it, but almost embarrassing, so we really gotta work on those, and I've always been an advocate in terms of getting more equipment, fixing, dealing with the gophers, whatever we need, we just gotta do it, please. And if you guys want, communications, making sure when the games are on, that the parks are in best shape. It's important, having beautiful parks, I think in a town, it's important, for recreation, for games, for what, for people being able to enjoy them at, when they have parties and things like that, so please, let's concentrate and focus on that, and
Well, it could be a safety issue and a liability,
oh, yeah.
if it's
Yeah.
not safe to run.
No, the grass was in not a good shape at all. So, even like people that were mowing the lawn, that were saying like riding the lawnmower on there, it's like derby, it's just going up and down, I don't know what it needs to be done. If it's a matter of, maybe closing the park down and, a good time of the year and taking it down to bare minimum, flattening it out, reseeding it, if things like that, that means something big, if we need to, through Parks and Rec Committee, we could discuss that, put in the budget, but, we gotta get the parks, maintained. Even same thing with, Bethel Park. There's overgrown shrubs and grass is not in good shape, and it's just not just the playing field, it's just all around it. It just doesn't look nice. There are weeds and, things like that. So, but again, all I'm asking, saying is just, I think we need to focus on it, and hopefully with having these maintenance workers, if you need the right equipment, if you need whatever you need, bring it, please bring it to us through the general manager, so we could discuss it.
You're raising a good point though, because I think it probably would be in our best interest to provide TRF with what are our needs for Park and Rec. Because I think that there's just been this reliance upon filling a hole in our operating budget. But to your point, if you were to kind of have to regrade the fields and reseed it, that's a huge, one-time expense. Not only would you have to find the window in which you could do that seasonally, but I think that is something that's just not, I think in an operating budget. So that I think would be something that it would be beneficial to have a list of what are all those things that we would like to have some help on special projects of that nature. So.
Yeah. Great, thank you. All right. Last one?
Going back to administration.
I'm
Well,
sorry, I had one real quick question. For the actual facilities, the Park and Rec facility, is there any type of construction of, of the actual building? I know we talked about it briefly in the Park and Rec committee, but I don't know.
And that would be another one too.
It's easy to sell when you're fundraising, help,
Well, I
repaint,
think-
give us a new AC system, or
Well, I
like
think it
patch
also
it.
benefits TRF to be able to say, here are specific projects, so your donations went to these specific items. Instead of just, an operating budget where it's like, okay. I mean, people can then see the actual results.
So we actually have a list of maintenance needs for both that building and the community center that are recognized. I mean, staff has generated the list, but they're not resolved in the budget we're talking about today. There's not fixes for them in the budget. But things like painting and deferred maintenance,
So I know we talked in the Park and Rec committee that we were gonna try to have some of it reflected in this year's budget, so. I don't know what happened.
yeah,
there.
there's room to build this back in. Actually, this item kind of came before the facilities committee and there was a little disagreement about whether that was under that committee's purview, and so, but really, we
No.
kind of we were a little, it's an internal issue. We kind of got started on this later than building the budget, and so they didn't make it to the budget list, but they can. There's money available in Parks and Recreation to do some of those improvements.
And I think it's important along of what was said about the parks, our building also is something that kids are present in using and members of the community are going through, so I think it's worth prioritizing in the budget this year.
Is there a specific?
I don't know what the needs are, that's,
I think
I brought it up like briefly.
I
in
think
the-
we need
I
to
think we need
define.
to yeah, I think we'll need to look at it at the committee level, see what the needs are, just after discussion with staff, and then come back to the board with a amended budget. Whichever committee, we'll find out tonight.
All right, so. Going back to admin, so the numbers are on page 47. So the admin revenues, so we get a little bit of money. This room gets used by a small number of groups for meetings, to the youth football and a couple of Lynn CSD, et cetera. So that's that rental income is when groups use this room. It doesn't get used very often. We had some more regular users pre-COVID, and we had a church that was in here every Sunday, but they have not returned. Interest income, that's on the fund balance. There's some miscellaneous income. This might be reimbursements for like ergonomic furniture or something through SDRMA. I'll skip the transfer of other funds for just a second, and then this transfer in CERBT, that is the trust, the OPEB trust, the post-retirement healthcare trust that we established, and that $220,000 matches the expected expenses associated with PERS retirees. So when we have an employee who's retired, who's on district medical care, at the end of the year, we'll true up our expenses and then make a withdrawal from that trust back to the district's operating account. So if that number changes, goes down, for example, then this revenue, the two are tied together. So the most important revenue source, the most significant revenue source are transfers from other funds. And those are best illustrated by looking on page 14 of this budget. And you'll recall that a year ago this time, the board adopted an updated cost allocation plan. And that plan, the numbers you see here by percentages are a little bit different than they were a year ago because the plan is dynamic. It relies on the prior year. So when I say prior year, it relies on the page you're looking at. These percentages were determined by the actual operating expenses from fiscal year 22-23 to determine the cost allocation for fiscal year 24-25. So it's a lagging system. Waits till the books are closed, recalculate the figures, they're populated for the next year. So these percentage allocations are based on what was spent district wide and then divided by these various funds, and that's how this is determined. And then the total cost is the remaining portion of the admin fund, right? In this case, 1.264 million are divided by those percentages to these various funds. So, you know, water, sewer and fire, pay the bulk of those costs. So the Parks and Recreation Solid Waste is at 12.59% based on that 2023 adopted cost allocation plan. So again, the figures are dynamic and I would expect them to continue to evolve a little bit. If one fund grows faster than the other funds for whatever reason in terms of its expenses, it's gonna end up picking up a larger percentage of this allocation, in admin allocation using that particular adopted plan. Going back to the admin fund, page 47, again, I mentioned the $220,000. That's up quite a bit from last year. That there's a little factor in there. A little bit of that is due to health insurance costs that are anticipated to go up. But the bigger reason is we have more retirees in that retiree health plan than we had a year ago. Two employees retired from the district over the past year. Legal services. This is up about $8,000 at the recommendation of the Finance and Admin Committee. The desire of the committee was to put sufficient funds in the budget so that we could have more regular attendance by district legal counsel at your board meetings. That $8,800 increase won't fund a legal rep at every board meeting, but we don't yet have somebody lined up to do that. So I thought we were safe with that amount of money for the next fiscal year. But if, so the long-term cost would be probably a little bit higher, and it kind of depends on how many meetings we have them cover and how many hours we're billed for, because it won't just be for, I mean, they're gonna have, the legal counsel have to do some meeting preparation, not just bill for attending the meeting. They'll need to review some documents in order to be adequately prepared to answer questions at the meeting. So that's in there. Liability costs, I just want to point this out because this has grown quite a bit. If you look at it's 170, almost 100, it's $172,500. That's our estimate from SDRMA this year. Just 2 years ago, that was 118,000. So it's up almost 50% in 2 years. That's really two factors. Claims, we've had a few. That doesn't help. And then just the general insurance, liability insurance issues in California. You know, you've probably all seen at home, your homeowners policies have gone up, you know, notably over the past couple of years. We have the same kinds of impacts. So that's a significant, you know, that's, you know, it's 30 grand more just from last year to this year. As far as some one-time expenses, we did program $2,500 to replace these chairs. If you will, there's some comments. Chairs.
So much fun.
Just the one.
I don't know, these
We don't know where it
so
is.
we're sitting a little higher than the desk.
Yeah, what makes this tricky without getting into the details is these desks are not normal desk table height, right? They were built that way, and then the district staff, I don't know who actually, but
Rollers on.
yeah, the rollers were added, and so they sit about 2 inches higher than a normal chair, a normal table. So they're an unusual height. So anyways, I'll wait your feedback. If you don't want that item in there, it can be.
That one certainly needs to be replaced.
Adjustable chairs that move up and down.
And then yeah, height adjustable. And then we have $9,000 is programmed for the 2024 election. We're scheduled to have a board election this year. That won't be spent if there's not an election. But so that covers all of them. Other cool.
Any questions?
Questions? I think I just captured one requested change.
Yeah.
Related to Parks and Recreation.
All right, okay, we're gonna go ahead.
So let me just, okay, what you're gonna get then for the next meeting, hopefully, are departmental summaries, so like a couple of pages for each department describing, putting in text the projects and the forecast, et cetera. And a budget transmittal letter and replacement pages for Parks and Recreation.
And the summer.
And the summer from Alice, because that's gonna change too. So you'll have, we'll just provide those replacement pages. You can keep your budget document. Insert the new pages in the next week.
Well, thank you very much. You guys appreciate it. Great job, Natalie, as always. Jeff, thank you for presenting it so neatly. Makes a lot of sense. So we are going to adjourn to a closed session, but I see if there's a public comment on closed session. There aren't any, so we're going to adjourn the closed session. Thank you.